Good morning, Abby. How'd you sleep?
Good.
Good. Good morning, Biddle. How'd you sleep?
Good.
Good morning, J-Bud.
Good morning.
How'd you sleep?
Good. How about you?
I slept good.
Good.
Thanks for all you do in the morning. Getting your chores done.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for all you do.
You're welcome. Good morning, Esther. How'd you sleep?
Good.
Good. You've been up for, what, a couple hours already? There he is. Good morning, Nady.
Good morning.
How'd you sleep?
Good.
Good. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you too, Mother.
Good morning, Caleb.
Good morning.
How'd you sleep?
I slept good.
Good. Working on cleaning out the rocket mess.
Yep.
There's a little bit of a polyp of ash down there that needs cleaned out.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can put the top back on and we can get it going again.
Yep.
Thank you, Caleb. Sounds like we're back in business out here. I hear it rocketing. Nice. And Josh was off before sunup and Kip just left as well. So they're both working off the homestead today. Yay. It's the milking time. How's it coming?
Alright, we should start.
Just started. There's Buttercup. She's doing great. She's what, 2.5 weeks old now, about? Almost 3 weeks old. Hey, little one. She's gonna eat your skirt. Starting the gentling process. Hi, little one.
Good job.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the homestead and good morning to you, although I know it might not be morning when you're watching this, but I hope you all slept well and are doing well. This morning is quite cold, but it's supposed to warm up a little bit today, and actually this whole week we're going to have a little bit better weather, and so we're getting inspired to get back outside and start doing some more garden prep. We've got our sweet potato starts going in the windowsill, which makes me so excited every time I look at them to think about gardening. And so I know I've shared a bit in the past about how we fill our garden beds, but I get a lot of questions about it and I've never done just a dedicated video, at least not that I can remember, about how we fill our garden beds. So today I'm going to be sharing how we fill new beds, how we top off old beds, fertilizers we use, all the things. And I'm also really excited to get some of our first spring plantings into our Vajiga grow bed. So we've got some little baby lettuce starts in here that have overwintered in our greenhouse. I've had to double cover them during our really cold spurts, but they're still alive and they're ready to go into one of our grow beds today. So we're going to be doing that as well. So in over 10 years of gardening here in the Missouri Ozarks, we found that at least a little bit of a raised bed is super helpful because we've got really heavy clay, rocky soil. So at least a mounded or short raised bed works really well here. We use our taller, deeper raised beds for things like carrots and sweet potatoes. Those work really well in the higher raised beds. So we have used all kinds of materials to fill our beds over the years. We've learned a lot about what works well and what doesn't work, and so today I'm hoping to share some of the things that have worked the best for us so far. We still have a lot to learn and a lot of experimenting to do, but hopefully it's helpful to someone out there. So we have rock-lined raised beds, which are free. We have lots of rocks around here, but a little bit of maintenance because they do have to be redone from time to time. And we have 4-inch cedar-lined beds, and this cedar is only about 1 inch thick. It's mostly free, super easy to put together, and then we have pea gravel on the pathways. It kind of helps hold it in a bit. And we have a little bit taller raised beds, also lined with cedar. There's some more a little bit taller cedar lined beds. And out in the main crop we have weed torched 2x12 pine and a couple taller beds with the 2x12 stacked, so it makes 2-foot beds, which is what's going in here in the greenhouse. This is 2x12 And so most of these beds are about 2 feet tall. Some are a little more, a little less. And we even have some temporary beds made out of these cants from the mill, which we've done a lot of in the past. They last for a little bit, but do eventually break down. And we have one really tall, 3-foot high metal garden bed here from a company called Bajiga. And unfortunately, I left the cover off when it got really cold, so we lost most of what's in here. That's why I'm going to be replanting it with lettuce, hopefully later today. So for these shorter raised beds, we were able to just mostly pull soil out of the pathways and put it into the beds, and then just put a couple inch layer of compost on top, and that's worked really well. For some of the beds, as you can see, we've put a layer of leaves on top, and I'll talk more about that later. Quality compost can get really expensive if you're not making your own, and if you've got some deeper raised beds to fill. So in that kind of situation, we would do a mixture of equal parts quality compost, peat moss, and either vermiculite or perlite, whichever we could find at the best price. And if we weren't able to afford the peat moss and the vermiculite or perlite additions, we have just used sawdust to mix in with the compost. Not a lot, maybe no more than 10 to 20% of the sawdust mixed with compost, but that just kind of helps stretch the compost a little bit. And for our really deep beds, we used a method called hugelkultur, and that's where you used just rotten logs and old pieces of wood, things like that, just down in the bottom to help fill it up initially. Those beds do sink really quickly the first year, so you do have to keep adding material for a couple years to get them up to the level you want, but that really helps save on the cost of filling those really deep beds. When we first started gardening, we didn't have our own compost set up, but now we've got some good compost systems going. So we've got 2 kinds of compost that we produce here on the homestead. One is from all of our winter barn muck, so that's mostly, got a lot of roosters, that's mostly the cow manure and scrap hay from the barn. So we'll show you a little bit about that later today when we've got some barn mucking to do, so I'll kind of explain that process then. And then behind me here in our kitchen garden, we set up composting bins that are more so for just garden waste. And last year I discovered that there's a lot of weeds here on the property. Some of them get 8-10 feet tall, and before those go to seed, it's a lot of organic matter that can be added to these compost bins. So I've been able to make some weed seed free compost in these bins that we can mix in with our barn muck compost. Our plant compost bins over here, we're storing some leaves on top right now, but down underneath the leaves is compost that we made last year just out of garden scraps and weeds off the property. This is the one we're actually building right now, and every once in a while we do throw in some manure, chicken manure or cow manure, but it's mostly just plant matter that goes into these and makes a really nice compost. Our plan originally with these 4 bins here was to rotate the compost one time, and we've just found that it actually breaks down really quickly and we don't need to rotate it, keeping one that we're filling and then the other ones are resting and doing their thing, and then we usually have one bin that we're actually harvesting out of as well. So the 4 bins, each about 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot, so 4 foot cube, has been working really well doing this plant compost system. So that gives us 2 different types of compost, and it's nice to have one compost that has almost no weed seed in it, and so that can go as more of a top layer in the beds, which is really helpful. So that's how we fill the bulk of the bed, but then next I want to talk about toppers, or what I like to call toppers. It's the final 1 or 2 inches of material on the top of each of the beds, and that's going to vary a little bit depending on what you want to plant in the bed. So one of our favorite toppers has been leaves. It's best to be able to mow them or let them sit for 1.5 to 2 years in some kind of a cage. You can just use a fence to kind of cage them in, and they'll break down into a nice leaf mold. So mowed leaves or leaf mold on top of the bed really does well with potatoes. We've been doing that for a couple years now, and it seems to really be helping our potato harvest. Something we like to put on top for things that little seeds like carrots or things like lettuce with little delicate plants. We like to use products from Walmart, so it's super easy to get. It's not too expensive. It's Pro Mix, and it's OMRI certified for organic growers. So that works really well to top off the beds that we're going to plant lettuce, carrots, any of those little delicate plants or seeds. Another topper that I wasn't able to do this last year because we had way too many free-ranging birds and muscovies getting in the garden, but my plan was to do a winter kill cover crop. So that's where you plant for your zone plants that will die off in the winter time. So you seed your beds in the fall, and those plants get a chance to grow a foot or two tall, and then in the winter frost and freeze kills them, and it creates just a mat over your bed that helps smother out the weeds, and then come spring you just kind of pull that mat apart to plant your plants into. So that's a really good topper for things like brassicas, so plants that you're going to start in the greenhouse and put out in the spring, early springtime. I haven't tried it, but I think it could also work well with things that you direct sow that are a bigger seed like squash. And that method could also work well for things like tomato plants, pepper plants, where you also start them in the greenhouse and you're putting out pretty good sized plants. So you can just part the cover crop residue and plant right down into it. And the last topper that's a pretty obvious one that works for pretty much anything you're gonna grow is just a good quality compost that is ideally weed seed free, so been produced without a lot of weed seed going into it. Unless you're able to keep a hot compost that can kill the weed seeds, it's best to not put those weed seeds into the compost. We have tried to do a quick hot compost that requires a lot of turning in the past, and I have not been very successful with that. I still want to keep trying, but it's a method that takes a lot more time and thought. So far we've just stuck with the really simple, basic, low maintenance forms of compost building. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm going to share some of our favorite fertilizers. Top on the list is definitely Comfrey Tea. It's something that we've made for years and it works really well. It's super easy. It's free after you invest in a container and a spigot. So you basically just need a good sized barrel of some sort and then put a good spigot on the bottom of it. We like to put a little bit of a wire mesh down in the bottom just to make sure that the spigot doesn't clog. And then you fill it up with water, comfrey. You could put weeds in there to make it even better. A lot of weeds have a lot of nutrition in them, especially if you grab the weeds that are growing in your garden beds, because they are there to show you that there's something lacking in the soil. And if you put those weeds into your fertilizer, then you're going to add back in what the soil needs. And then a little bit of leaf mold also helps in that comfrey fertilizer. And then you just let it sit, depending on how hot or cold it is. If it's really warm, only a few days and it's ready, then you just use that liquid mixed with water and water away. Water your plants. Any of your plants will love it. And then as you use up the liquid, you just keep adding more water, more comfrey, more weeds to the barrel as the summer goes along. And it's a continuous free source of liquid fertilizer for the garden. We've really struggled with carrots and beets and sometimes even onions. We've found that adding bone meal back into the soil for all of those crops works really well. So bone meal is one that we've used and will continue to use for the carrots and beets and onions. And then whenever possible, we like to add in the fall when we're prepping the beds, or in the spring, sea minerals and land minerals or earth minerals. So we like to use something like azomite for the land minerals and kelp for sea minerals. We don't always have those on hand, but when we do, we like to add those. And last but not least, we like to use worm castings. They're quite expensive, and so it's kind of an extra treat for those beds that are really needing a little extra boost. But we did recently get our own worm factory, and so we have our first harvest that we're going to get to add to our beds going forward, which is a real blessing. We hope to get more worms in the future because they've been working really well so far. Esther takes care of them. Yeah, eventually maybe we'll have enough worms that we can have a supplemental feed for our birds on the homestead as well. We'll see. One thing real quick I forgot to mention, another option for filling garden beds, just one more possibility if you have chickens or turkeys or some kind of birds on your homestead, you can use the soil in their yards if you've got them in yards. We've done that before, especially if you add some kind of material to their yard. Like in the fall, we've added big piles of leaves. Sometimes we'll put some of our barn muck in the chicken yard. And then anytime you have a coop to clean out, anything like that can be worked into your compost or into your garden beds as well. But you do have to be careful of weed seed. When we've used compost from the chicken yards, it's been very weedy. And so we have to be careful with that. So one of the weekly jobs through the winter is to build our compost heap from all of the barn muck. That's one of the jobs for today. This pile heats up through the winter even on the coldest days. You'll see steam coming off of it in the mornings. So all of the weed seed in the middle of that pile will be killed by the heat, but all of the weed seed around the edges won't get hot enough to be killed. So we try and use that compost on the bottom of our beds when we're filling up the beds. So here is what that pile turns into. This is our finished compost from the barn muck. So we'll just keep on adding to that pile all winter long as we're feeding hay to the cows. And then in the middle of the summertime, it will get one turn when we bring it from beside the barn over there into this main crop area, where it will sit until we're ready to put it on the garden the following fall or spring. This is a little bit frozen. See if we can chop it up and get it spread here. I think I've decided not to plant our little lettuce seedlings into this bed. It's like a solid block of ice about 2 inches down. And so I think I'm gonna find another spot for those little lettuce plants and wait for this bed to warm up. It's a really great location for summer greens actually, because it stays pretty shady. And so I think I'll save this veggie bed for planting something in the spring, going into summer that's gonna need some shade. We have really enjoyed this bed though. It's grown so much for us over the last couple of years. So if you're interested in a really easy to put together, long-lasting, durable garden bed, check out the link below. You can get 10% off your order through Vajiga Grow Beds using our code. All right, so we've got a bed over here that gets a lot of sun and it's got a lot of chickweed in it, which I'm going to feed to the chickens. Has one last cabbage I'm going to harvest and a few carrots down here, but there's plenty of room for lettuce, so I think this is where the lettuce is going to go. I think the ducks want some of this. Hey duckies! Oh yeah. Loving it. You want some too, chickens? There you go. Enjoy. Alright, let's find a new home for you. What's this? This variety is called Land This Winter. It's one we've grown for years and it's super cold hardy. So hopefully it'll do well through the rest of this winter in this bed and give us some early spring lettuces. First planting of 2025. Yay! Praise Yah! Maybe next time the boys' wheeler will be here, huh? Make it a little easier carting that from the back of the creek hillside.
It's not that heavy though.
All right. You're very strong, you know that?
Thanks.
Yeah, so those are the basics of how we fill, top, and fertilize our garden beds. If you guys have any suggestions for us or any ideas to share, please leave them in the comments below. We really enjoy getting your ideas and getting to see learning continue in the comment section. Before we go today, we have a thank you to give.
Thank you to Hope for the cookies and the banana chips. And the hair clips.
And thank you as always to our patrons who make these videos possible. We so appreciate you guys. For those of you on Patreon who are at the tree planting level, we just ordered trees, and so we're really hopeful to be able to get those trees planted in the next few months. We'll see how the weather goes. Until next time, we pray blessings over you and yours, and whatever you do, do it with your whole heart.